Hello, Brother Sewing and Crafting family. Angela Wolf here, Brother Brand Ambassador, with another fun show for you. So I see, Lorraine, you get the big award today for popping in first on YouTube. I love when I see your comments before we even go live. Then I know everything's working, at least on your end, maybe not ours. So welcome, say hi. We are streaming on Brother Sewing YouTube and Facebook pages. And we have the fabulous Wendy Chow, another Brother Brand Ambassador, with the Quilt Sew Along. Have you been participating? Have you signed up for the newsletter and received her beautiful letters? And also, have you downloaded the free quilt design? I'm just curious. Lorraine, I know you said you were choosing different colors, so I'm curious to see what happens there. But Wendy, I know you have been busy sewing away. Let's bring her to the party. Wendy, how are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm loving this sew along. I love the colors that you've chosen. The techniques are fast and easy. That's my kind of quilting.
Yep.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it definitely, with the shortcuts I've implemented, the different methods, it does make it faster. So it's a lot, I guess, less intimidating, if that makes sense, because it can get pretty intimidating when you see a whole overall quilt design, which is the one that we're working on right behind me, where there's so many pieces. Like sometimes there's even up to 1,000 pieces. I haven't counted how many pieces there are here, but definitely with some of the shortcuts that I've shown over the last couple of weeks does make it a lot faster. But if you've been following along the quilt along, we are now up to I believe it's up to week 4. But what I'm going to be demonstrating today's live is a week ahead. So we're working on week 5. This particular, in week 5, oh no, in week 4, we are creating the last block design. There's 3 different blocks. I think I'm just going to lower it just slightly so you can see it. So there's 3 different block designs. I'm going to just push back a little bit. There's 3 different block designs, and then each week, as of week 2, we've been working on this one. So this is week 2 block, week 3, and now week 4. And then we'll be making 3 of the same quilt blocks, but then in a different color, just slightly different. And then, so with today's live, I'm focusing more on the sashing strips, which are the white frames around the blocks, and also cornerstones. For this particular, whoops, just realized my head was cut off. But yes, for this particular one, what I'm going to be showing you today is sort of like a nice little trick to have in your back pocket. It's not included in the actual pattern this week, but I just wanted to show you by adding some cornerstones, quick corner units, sorry, on the corners of each of these sashing strips. It kind of creates sort of like a sawtooth star design. Hopefully you can kind of see it. So I wanted to show you how to add those quick corner units on each of those sashing strips, but also to really just reinforces what we were exploring last week's live. And yeah, so it's a nice to have in the back pocket, but also I did make this little sample as well for this particular live too. And with this little trick in your back pocket, you could also do this, which is just, instead of quilt blocks that we did, you could just cut out squares and then just sashing strips, and then just add these little cornerstones, not cornerstones, these little quick corner units. So combined with the cornerstones in the middle, it creates this sort of sawtooth star design. So it's really effective, really quick and easy. So yeah, let's get to it, and I'll show you how to do that.
Wendy, those are beautiful. Those are beautiful. Elsa says
Thanks.
she was overwhelmed by all the pieces, but she got them all cut out. Good job, Elsa. I love it. But I love those. I love the way that looks with those corners. So I'm looking forward to this.
Yeah, and one of the features on the BQ3100, which is the sewing machine that I'm working on, which is part of the Quilt Club series, and I'm sure that features also on quite a few of the other brother machines, is that Sew Straight laser guide. And with that actually really speeds up adding this quick corner units on each of those sashing strips. So I'm going to turn you over to my desk, and I'll show you how to do it. So I'll just show you how it works if you did not have the Sew Straight Laser Vision Guide on your sewing machine. So for each of the sashing strips, you need 4 squares. And so for this particular one, I have cut out 2-inch squares for each corner. So like so. And I'm going to mark a diagonal guideline from one corner to the other, on the wrong side. I know it's a solid fabric, so it's hard to tell which side is the right or wrong side, but let's just take it that this is going to be the wrong side. So I'm going to draw those guides. Get my handy dandy pen. And from one corner to the other, just draw a diagonal guideline. So it looks like this. Hopefully you can see it. So just going to repeat that on the other 3. All right. So that's drawn, oopsies. So I've done the diagonal guidelines. I'm just going to move this aside. And then when you've done that, you're going to take 2 of these marked squares. Again, they're 2-inch squares. So if you want to do it on your project, that's not a problem at all. So you need 2-inch squares for this particular one. And then so it's right sides together. So I'm going to put it on this corner, and we want to just make sure that the diagonal guideline is going that way. And on this corner, you want it going this way. And then so when you cut and fold over, when you press, it's going to look like that. So we're just making these little quick corners here. So I'm going to grab a pin and pin this in place. I have not cleaned. If you've been following along, I have not cleaned my pin container yet, if that's what you guys are thinking. So it's kind of out of, I think it's out of, no, yeah, it's slightly out of the camera's view, so you can't see it.
Oh no, Wendy, we can see it perfectly. I actually cleaned mine. I only have pins now.
I did think about it, and I was like, nah, you know what? I'm not gonna. Anyway, so I've done that. So I pinned these, and now I am going to sew on that diagonal guideline. So I'm going to slightly move my camera over. But yes, this is basically the same technique as what we did in last week's Facebook Live. All right, here we go. Sorry, I'm just going to give you a little bit of motion sickness while I adjust my camera slightly.
I'll take you out just for a sec. Nobody's going to get sick. You're getting pretty good at this, moving it with nobody even noticing. But by the way, we are live today, so leave your comments in the chat. And did you clean out your pinball since the last time we chatted? That's what we're curious on.
All right. I promise you I will do it before the end. I'll promise you. Anyway, so now that we've got it here, I'm going to move the needle position, because I was piecing before, to the middle. And I'm going to lower my needle, and I'm going to match that needle up with the mark guideline, and then just stitch away. Oh. There we go. All right, and then I'm going to repeat on the other side. I wonder if it's long. Oh, it's long enough for me to kind of chain piece it. Actually, I won't confuse you. I'm going to take it off, and then I'll show you. Oopsie, it actually kind of accidentally got caught there. But I sewed on the marked guide, and I'm going to repeat that on this side as well. So I'm going to stitch on that marked guide. Stitching.
Amanda says she hasn't cleaned out hers either.
Great. That makes me feel a lot better. Actually, one of the other things I need to do in my sewing room is, as part of my spring cleaning thing, which I'm not sure when I'm going to get around to, but is to also like remove the plate here and actually clean out the dust bunnies, so I know that it's kind of gunky in there. All right, so I'm going to trim a 1/4-inch seam allowance. So what I'll do is I'll get the ruler, and I measure a 1/4-inch from that marked guide or that sewn line, like so. And I'm going to use the rotary cutter and then trim it. Actually, speaking of that, last week, because when I trim it, you have that waste. And I wanted to actually demonstrate to you now that we're talking about it is you could actually make a half square triangle at the same time when you stitch on this quick corner unit. So what I do now that I've stitched on this marked guide, I'm going to grab my fabric pen. Sorry, I'm just going to move it to yeah. And then I'm going to measure 1/2 inch from that original marked guide. I'm just going to bring it up to camera closer. And then now I'm going to stitch on this blue line. And then I'll show you this quick little trick in creating a piece of like a half square triangle from this piece of scrap that you would normally discard or just put it into your scrap stash. Just going to move it closer. And I'll just quickly show you. So I've just sewn that marked guide. It's going to be a really tiny half square triangle, but if you are working on this week's foot-long task, you will definitely have a bigger half square triangle. So you can see I've just stitched on that marked guide, get my rotary cutter, and I again just measure 1/4 inch from that original sewn line and then cut. Oopsies, I definitely need to change my blade on my rotary cutter. But you can see this is like really, really tiny half square triangle. So that doesn't go completely to waste. You could just use that and save it for another project. And then let's see, this folds out like that. So you've done one corner of that sawtooth star kind of looking sashing. And I'm just going to do that on here. On the other side. Yeah, I definitely need to change my rotary cutter blade. I've been cutting paper with it because I've been doing foundation paper piecing.
Wendy.
I've been doing foundation paper piecing. But anyway, so this is how it looks like once I've sewn on it. And then now I'm going to repeat on the other 2 corners with these other 2 squares that we originally marked at the very beginning. And remember, just to make sure that the diagonal guidelines are, you know, rotated in the correct orientation, which you'll see in a little moment, and also right sides together. But you know it will be right sides together because you've done it the first time, but also the marked guideline is on the wrong side of the fabric. So let's do the first corner. So I'm going to pop this here so you can see that it, oops, there we go. This goes on top of here and pin it. And then we're going to stitch on that marked guide. So I'm going to move this back up a little bit so you can see. Grab a pin. Go through there. And I'm going to repeat on this side. And again, I'll just show it to you so you have a closer look. So it's going to be like this. The diagonal guideline is going to go in this direction. And if you do want to follow this technique along, and on the blog post on it is going to come out on Monday on the Brothers Stitching Social blog. So I'm going to move this back closer, and we're going to do the same thing basically, and we're going to stitch on that marked guide. So I'll load the needle and stitch on it. All right, so that's the first guide done, and then now I'm just going to do the other side and sew on that marked guide. All right.
That machine is so quiet.
Yeah. I love it. All right, so I've done that. You can see that. And then as we're going to remove the pins, and then again, we're going to repeat and trim those 1/4 inch seam allowances. And then we would have then done our first sashing strip that kind of gives that sawtooth star effect. And then I'll repeat it again, but I want to highlight this awesome feature, this Sew Straight Vision guide on my machine. So I'm just going to move it up a little bit so you can see. So I'm going to be measuring 1/4 inch from that marked guide. And then trim. And then repeat again. And I'm just going to finger press it. I know I should be using the iron, but here you go. So it looks like that. So that's one sashing strip with cornerstones that will then end up being the points of the sawtooth star. So I'll actually just grab the example that I had earlier so you can get a closer look at it to get an idea.
That's so easy to do.
Yeah, so just, adding a few little corners can go a long way. So I'll just show you how this looks like. So I'll bring the quilt top back.
Oh,
So you
look at
see what I've
that.
just done? Yeah. So it's just simply adding those little corners. You get that sawtooth star effect in between each of the, or where the cornerstone is, and as well as the sashing. So it's a nice little effect that you could add to your basically any quilt design that has cornerstones and sashing. All right, so I am going to bring back, I'm going to demonstrate this step again, or adding quick corners to the sashing strip. I'm just going to grab 4 of these, and this time around, instead of taking the time to use the fabric marker to to mark the diagonal guidelines, I'm actually not going to do that, which is a huge time saver. And I'm just going to go straight ahead and do it on the machine. Before I do, I'm just going to quickly pin these in place. Okay. Oopsie, so I got it on this corner here. Pin it in place. When you do pin this, just make sure that it's out of the way of the corners here, because that's where the seam is going to go through, and you kind of don't want to sew over it. But you don't, I guess you kind of don't really want to sew over the pins, although I must say I do that. Do you sew over pins, Angela?
No, I try not to.
Yeah. I'm a bit of a risk taker, and sometimes I get scared, and I'm like, thank goodness I wear glasses, because I can't imagine, like, if you're like sewing and then all of a sudden a pin like tries to flick, hit your eye or something. But
Yeah, that would be
yeah,
bad. That would be bad.
that'd be terrible, really bad sewing story.
Everybody's saying, hey, they're loving this. And do you accidentally sew over pins? Sometimes, but I try not to. Hey,
Yeah,
Amanda wants to know, do you buy new rotary blades or do you sharpen yours?
I buy new rotary blades.
Yeah, me
Have
too.
never sharpened before. Yeah,
I did
I
once.
don't. Yeah. Oh, okay. I did.
Once.
I
Like
wonder
once
how would you
in 30 years. It didn't work out well. So I buy them. It just took forever. And I talk to friends who they sharpen their blades. They love it. They have a little tool that does it. I just buy.
Yeah, one thing I do actually is, because I do a lot of foundation paper piecing, sometimes like when I do trim templates that haven't been pieced, what I do is I just save those old rotary cutter blades for paper.
That's what
And
I do too.
they just still
Great
work as
idea.
fine. So it's not completely a waste. Yeah.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I
make sure
agree.
that you do keep those in a safe location, because I have had some sewing room accidents before with a rotary cutter blade, and it's like a murder scene. Anyway,
Not good.
yeah, not good. No, absolutely not good. All right, so I'm back at my sewing machine, and I mentioned earlier that I do have the Sew Straight Laser Vision Guide on my machine. It's on some other brother machines. It's on the Avenir, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to turn it on. So keep an eye out on here, and you'll see. Ta-da! There's that laser guide, which is kind of like a replacement for, um, you know, marking that guide when it comes to doing, well, for me, doing this part. And I also use this for piecing binding strips together. But anyway, so we are going to sew this. And so if we had marked this square, it would have been from this point to this point. So I'm going to rotate it, and I'm going to use the Sew Straight Laser Vision Guide as my guide for this particular piece. So it will end up being like this, which is really cool. It saves a lot of time. So I'm going to lower the needle, and I'm going to like move this slightly closer up to where the needle is. And then what I do is then use this guide and match it up with this corner here. And the trick is, in order to keep this straight, is instead of keeping my eye focused on the needle, I focus on making sure that this laser guide stays at this corner in order to keep it straight. So I'm going to start sewing. All right, and I'll show you how it looks like. So I have just saved time thanks to that Sew Straight Laser Vision Guide. So I've just stitched my first diagonal guide, first diagonal line, and I'm going to repeat on the other side. And on the other side, the diagonal line is going to go from this corner to this corner. And I'm going to remove the pin here. And I'm going to repeat it again. And don't worry, I'm going to do it on the other two corners. So I'm going to lower the needle and then match this top corner here with that needle here, with the sewing machine needle, and then just slightly, reposition the piece so that the laser guide is right at that corner here. And then I'm going to focus on making sure that this laser guide is always touching this point. All right. And I've just sewn that. And again, I did not draw any guides, and it's pretty spot on. And I did it on this side. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So I'm going to push this back a little bit, get my cutting mat. There you go. And then I'm just going to get my rotary cutter and ruler. And then I'll repeat it another 2 times on the other side. I promise you next time when we go live that I will have a new rotary cutter blade. So don't judge me. All right, here we go. Got it.
Hey, Wendy, someone's
Yeah.
asking, what is the size of those blocks that you're using, that you're cutting right now? 1 or 2 inches?
These little squares?
Yeah.
These little squares, they're 2 inches. So yeah, they're 2-inch squares.
Perfect.
And
Thank you.
how you work it out as well. And it will come up as well if you forgot the dimensions for this particular project for these little cornerstones. They will be provided in the next blog post that will be posted on Monday. So if you do sign up to get the email newsletters, you'll definitely have that direct link in there, and you can follow along with that. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right, so we're going to do the same thing. I'm going to lay this on top. Oops, just to give you an idea. Like that. So I'm going to lay this piece of square on top of here. And get a pin. And pin it in place. And I'm going to repeat it on the other side as well. and pin it in place. And again, we want to try and avoid, the center of that. I need to ditch this pin out. It's bent. But anyway, so I'm going to try and avoid that, the center where it's like diagonal across here, because that's where that stitch is going to go. So I've done that. And we are ready to take it to the sewing machine. And remember, it's right sides facing each other. So I'm gonna move this back. All right. So it might be a little bit tricky to see it here, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to lower the needle, and the needle is going to be touching that corner of that square. And then I just slightly move the piece so that it's the laser guide is touching this corner of the square, and we're going to stitch away and making sure that that laser guide, so that seam bolt is, here we go, is touching that. So I'm going to stitch away. I just did that. There you go. You could see I've just stitched that, and I'm going to repeat it on this corner. So the diagonal guide is going this way. So lower the needle touching at the that tip of that corner there. And then I'm going to line this diagonal guide with the other corner here, and then stitch away. All right, and then get my ruler back and rotary cutter. But yeah, you could see I've just stitched that, and now I just got to trim it. Move this aside. Hopefully you could see it. So I'm going to be measuring a 1/4 inch from that stitch guide, stitch line, sorry, and then trim that 1/4 inch seam allowance. So it looks like this, and I'm going to repeat it on this corner here. So if you're going to implement this for this particular project, you're going to need 96 2-inch squares to make this. So here you go. So it looks like
96
this.
2-inch squares.
Yeah, that's right. So be a little bit of mathing. So basically, from memory, there's 24 of these sashing strips. Each sashing strip needs 4 of these 2-inch squares. So 24 times 4 is 96. So a little bit of math there. So yeah.
Perfect.
And then, yeah. So if you were to implement this and you're following the pattern, you'll find that obviously that's not part of the steps, but if we are following along with the pattern, it'd be right between, so adding these cornerstones, right? It would be right between completing block C, which is on page 13. So between that and page 14, where you're actually starting to sew the sashing strips together. So yeah, that's where we are in the pattern. But yeah, that's basically it for what I wanted to show to you today by just adding, it's like really simple, these little cornerstones can really create this awesome effect, which I'm going to bring back again.
That is, when you hold that up, I was thinking, gosh, that's so many little itty bitty pieces. It is, but it's really not. I mean, it's amazing how just those corners make it look so beautiful.
Yeah, so it adds another dimension and just like another feature to look at. And once you've got that idea, you could definitely implement it onto other quilt projects like this. So this I just made just purely with scraps, and it's great use of just scraps in your stash. So it's like that.
Everyone's saying, beautiful. Let me bring you up by yourself. That is absolutely gorgeous. What a great idea.
Yeah. So definitely a technique or just something to have in your back pocket the next time that you are making a quilt that incorporates cornerstones and sashing.
I love it. All right. Anybody have any questions for Wendy? Because this has been fantastic. It looks like we've got somebody new on YouTube, Jones. I just dropped in a link for you. She was asking where to find the pattern in the Brother blog. I just dropped the link in for you on YouTube. So you can catch up and you can go watch all these plays too, which is great.
Yeah, so yeah, you can catch up and watch me how I sew together all three different blocks as part of the quilt along. Yes, today was definitely a lot shorter compared with the last 3 weeks, but it
Short,
definitely go
but
back to watch
sweet
it.
and perfect.
Yes.
I love it.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, Wendy, this was awesome. I can't wait to see what we're doing next week. Next week's kind of a bonus. Like the quilt along will be over, but we'll be live so then they can kind of ask questions and
Yeah. And also we'll be showing as a little bonus is you can make, and this is going to also be in week 6 of the Brother Stitching so along quilt along blog post. So again, make sure that you do subscribe to the email newsletters so that you could get the direct link to it. But I'm going to be using this sketch. Hopefully you could, let me just bring it up closer. It's really sunny over here. Maybe if I bring it over to my camera on the desk, you probably get a better view of it because the sun is like
okay.
blowing it out. But yes.
Oh, look at that.
It's super cute, but it's a really just simple embroidered sort of quilt label that you could add to your quilt. So I'm going to show you how to do that with the sketch. I'm actually going to bring the big quilt that I have in the background because I also did add that little detail. So give me a second. I'm going to grab the quilt.
I love this. I love this. So while she's grabbing the quilt, do you have any questions for Wendy? This has been such a fun quilt along. But I really like that sashing. I was thinking that looks really cool. It would make really cool ribbon going down the side of jeans. I think I'm going to have to play with this quilt sashing down the jeans.
Yeah, so sorry, mind the room. It's a little bit messy. I like have the quilt to cover it up, which is nice. But anyway, I'm going back to my desk now, and I'm going to show you a close up of this. So I did this with the sketch machine and embroidered this. So it's a nice little like addition to, finishing off your quilts.
Oh my gosh, I love it. Lois and Stars say that is what a great final touch to the quilt, the handmade.
Yeah. And you know what's really funny? So I was hand stitching this down one evening on the couch, and my husband noticed a bit of a typo there. So I want you guys to see what the typo is.
Designed and made by Wendy Chow, February 2024. Spring Serenade Quilt. I don't see it. I don't see anything spelled wrong.
Neither, but get this. It's the I was meant to write 2025. So just something funny to just a funny thing to point out. So we all do still make mistakes, but yeah.
Hey, you know what?
So
it's much better than a misspelled word where you're trying to use the Sharpie. Oh, sorry, not a Brother product, but you're trying to use a marker to correct your letters. So, what the heck?
No.
You know what? You probably came up with this idea in 2024 anyways, or sooner.
Yeah. True. That is true. So yeah, just like for everyone to laugh at, it happens. Could be a lot worse.
Amanda got it.
Yeah.
All right, let me bring up your website so everybody can see that scrolling down below. The Weekend Quilter. You got AngelaWolf.com and BrotherSews.com. And be sure to follow us all on social media. We love to see what you're working on. And especially if you're doing this quilt, use hashtag BrotherSews. Very, very much fun. Is this everybody saying they love the corner, they love the labels? I agree.
Yeah.
Wendy, this has been a fabulous show. So Wendy, before I let you go, I have a question for you. So
Yeah.
in my show the last few days, I've been making this top, and we're trying to vote if we should have it with sleeves or leave it a tank top. What do you think?
Oh, wait, is the sleeves long?
There are no sleeves yet.
Yeah.
I'm thinking either, I don't have enough fabric. I have enough fabric for short sleeves, kind of loose sleeves, or no sleeves.
Oh, oh, like maybe like a little flutter sort of sleeves. I don't know. Just
That
like a little bit. I think
a
that's
little.
probably what you need. Yeah, just like a little bit, and just like a little bit gathered to create that little sort of fluttered
The
kind of look.
fluttery sleeves. Amanda, I know you're on here. We all voted yesterday, and I think fluttered sleeves won the thing. So you have good taste.
Yeah. Oh, thanks.
Well, thank you for this quilt along. If you guys, even if you're watching the replay, drop your questions in. We'll be back next week. And if we have any questions that come up between now and then, we'll bring it up for you. So Wendy, I will see you next Thursday.
Yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you again.
Sounds good. All right, everyone, have a great day. Happy sewing. On Tuesday, we've got Kathy Stipe with some fun projects. Thursday, we'll be back here with Wendy. All right, till next time, happy sewing.
See ya.